So, welcome everybody to our podcast called Right Here, Right Now. And we are so excited to have Ayana Gray, a best selling author, here with us today. She's the author of the Beasts of Prey trilogy, and her newest book is I, Medusa. Welcome, Ayana. We're so glad you joined us here.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's always nice to be home, and home, of course, is Arkansas.
Absolutely, absolutely. We love having you here. For listeners who are just hearing maybe about you and your books for the first time, how would you describe the stories that you're most drawn to writing?
Oh gosh, well, I think a lot of my stories thus far have engaged with mythology. I was one of those kids growing up who just loved all kinds of mythology, and so my first three books are part of a trilogy: Beasts of Prey, Beasts of Ruin, Beasts of War, and that is the story of a beast keeper at a magical zoo and a warrior in training who come from very different walks of life, but end up having to go together into this magical jungle to try to find a monster. And this jungle is teeming with different creatures from different African mythologies.
Um,
And then I, Medusa is a standalone. It's an adult novel that reimagines the iconic Medusa that we know from pop culture as a young woman caught between rivaling gods. So mythology and fantasy and magic kind of play into all my books.
I just finished I, Medusa. My goodness, so good, so
Thank
good, and
you.
such a unique take on Medusa. I mean, you say Medusa, you picture the maybe the hag with the snakes and people
Mhm,
are stone. But
mhm.
you just built that world so great.
Thank you.
Now I'm also reading Beasts of Prey. I'm almost through with it, and it's very different, like you said.
Yeah.
It's more young adult. What age would you say that trilogy?
Yeah. So it's categorized as young adult. I always say I would maybe make it PG-13 only because some of the elements might be a little scary. It
Right.
goes into some deep discussion about emotion, but it's not I joke that two of my grandmothers were librarians and I wrote it in such a way that neither of them would have something to say to me at the end.
That's good. Yeah. Uh, and we struggle sometimes here at the bookstore with that young adult category because technically it's supposed to be like 13 to 18, and some things are just a little too much and too intense, I think, for a 13-year-old. So, but in reading this, I could see middle level,
Mhm.
definitely junior high and on up, that would be great. Your world building now in your trilogy in Beasts of Prey, it's very unique. I really liked it. Yeah, and like you said, building on myths seems to be a lot of your background and how you approach things. I,
Mhm.
Medusa, on the other hand, was you kind of started with something, and something we all kind of know, and then you created a whole new world around it. And I think that's not always easy to do. And so I was very impressed with what you did with that book. And
Thank you.
yeah, it was so good. So when you write, we always like to ask authors your process. Are you one of those methodical planners? You get an idea, you put it on a storyboard, put it up or something, or does it just reveal itself as you go along?
So I like to think about this as a spectrum. You have the quote unquote plotters on one side who plan meticulously. You have the pantsers on the other side who just go in, and see what inspires them. And I think I fit somewhere on the spectrum. I think I plot about 80 to 85% of my work, but I always leave a little bit of wiggle room to surprise myself. I never outline so rigidly that if I think of a better idea while I'm writing, I don't have room to make changes.
Uh, did in any of your books, did you ever hit a difficult point? I mean, once you got started, did you
Oh
was
yeah.
was there a point where you were like, I don't know where it's going now? How does that work into your process? What do you do with that?
Yeah, so I mean every book I write is hard. I tell people that it never gets easier, but it gets more familiar, and you remember, okay, I've done this before. So it never gets easier. And inevitably, I will plot something out. And then when I get to that point in the outline and it's time to write a certain scene or a certain chapter, it just won't feel right. And so sometimes I just have to write that bad chapter knowing it's going to change, and I can, take a few days away from it, come back and say, okay, why am I not liking this? Or
Mhm.
sometimes it's a symptom of a bigger issue. If I Medusa, so the main character, Medi, is invited to Athens to compete in several trials to become a priestess of Athena's temple. And I had different ideas for the trials, and I would start writing one and it didn't feel right. So I'd have to kind of walk backwards and say, okay, why isn't this working? Try something new. A lot of it is kind of try and fail until it feels right. And I describe writing sometimes for me anyway as tuning an instrument. You just have to keep tweaking and messing with things until, and then when the same way that when a guitar is tuned, you can hear it. And
Right.
as a writer, I know just instinctively when I finally have
Right.
gotten to the right thing. But it sometimes just takes tinkering and deleting and
Exactly.
messing with
Yeah,
things to
yeah,
get
we hear
there.
that from authors a lot, that you have this vision and but then at some point it veers off a little bit.
Yeah.
And I thought the trials that you did create were really good, and especially the last one that surprised me a little bit. So people need to read that book and find out what those were.
Yeah.
But and one of the things that I really am enjoying about reading your books is the way that you include a lot of African mythology and cultural references, because that's not really, it's not really, I guess it's maybe a subgenre, but it's not books that I've read before. And so I'm really enjoying getting into that mindset and that mythology. So do you find is it, but like I said earlier, with the Beasts of Prey, did you just start and you created that mostly on your own? Your world building was mostly your own. Yes, would you?
Yeah.
But I Medusa, like we said, a little bit different.
Yes, so the creatures that we see in Beasts of Prey and in those books, a lot of those creatures come from different mythology around the continent of Africa. And I have an author's note at the back saying, "This is where this creature came from. This is where this creature came from." We grow up and we all know it about Pegasus, the winged horse. We all know what trolls are. We all know about goblins, but there are other parts of the world where their monsters and creatures aren't as well known. So I always like to have that note in the back, like, this part's my imagination, but this part actually comes from different parts of the world. So yeah, it was kind of a blessing and a curse because with I Medusa, I had a framework that I could build off of, but it was still a framework that I had to keep to. Whereas with
Right.
Beasts of Prey, I could do whatever I wanted, but I also had nothing to build from. I had to come up with everything
Exactly.
myself,
Yeah.
except for the monsters.
Yeah. And I read your notes at the end, and that was really great to have that information about where you took some things from and how you changed it up, and the references that you went back to get some information, because sometimes I think we look at authors and it's like, okay, you sat down, you wrote a bunch of words, you came up with a book, and that was it. When there is so much background, I don't care what book, kind of book, genre, or whatever, that you just have to get in there and anyway, so you know where I'm going. Do you find that today's audience for books is really fascinated by mythology? Have you seen a time when like there's a lot of people heading that direction and pulling from mythology?
Yeah, I think mythology is one of those it's not quite its own genre. It's kind of a subgenre, but it's an evergreen one. I think that there are just certain characters from these myths who no matter how old they get, they continue to intrigue us and we see different takes. And it's sort of like if you were to have a vase in the middle of a room and you ask five people to paint that vase. It's going to look similar, but every artist is going to bring their technique, their style, and it's going
Right.
to be
Yeah.
different every time. So that's what makes it fun, and I think that's what keeps people from being tired of it. It's familiar, but it's fresh.
I was going to ask you about Medusa.
Mhm.
What do you think was the most misunderstood thing about her in the mythology that you wanted to address?
I So Medusa's an interesting figure because she's one of the most well-known figures in, I always say Greco-Roman because she appears in Greek and Roman mythology. She's very recognizable and she's a symbol all over the place. But so despite how kind of famous or infamous she is, there is startlingly little written about her in antiquity from the ancient poets.
Hmm.
She really has no voice. In my research, I wasn't able to find, I think, any instances of her actually speaking. She's spoken about, but she actually has no voice. And so, a big part of this novel was an opportunity to give her a voice.
And I think you did an excellent job because the book doesn't cover a long period of time, really, just a matter of months, I guess. And you start with her as a teenager.
Hmm.
And did you set out to like maybe address some of the issues that teenagers, all of us go through because she was growing and changing. So was that a goal you had when you were writing that you wanted to address those things?
Yes. So she begins the story as Medi. She's 17 years old, and that was a deliberate choice. She goes from Medi to Medusa. There's a transition that happens. But she, in the beginning of the story, is in this kind of awkward age period that I think a lot of us as adults forget about. It's this awkward time when you're really not a kid anymore, but you're not really an adult anymore, and you're straddling this uncomfortable line where the world might be looking at you as though you're an adult, but you may not feel ready. Um, I think we forget how hard
Right.
that particular period of time can be. We kind of go through it and then we immediately block it out and forget
Yeah,
about it.
exactly.
Um, and she's incredibly sheltered in this story. Hopefully you see her family life and see that she's on this island. She's sheltered. She's isolated in some ways because she's mortal and her family's immortal. And what I think people forget is you're very vulnerable at that time in your life. And
Right,
if you've grown up sheltered, and I know we're in Arkansas, so if you came from a small town where you
right,
weren't equipped with a
exactly.
lot of information, and then suddenly you go off to a big college or move to a big city for your first job, it can be incredibly jarring. And unfortunately, some people, when that happens, can be vulnerable to people targeting them. And that's exactly what happens.
Yeah,
So hopefully, yeah, you understand kind of why certain things happened and why she was targeted.
exactly. And I think you did a really good job for me in connecting those things, her story, but how it can relate, all of us could get a lesson from what you put in it. I really love that. So
Thank you.
we have some fun questions we sometimes like to ask. For
Okay.
instance, which character from your books would you most trust in a crisis? Who do you think would make it worse?
Oh gosh, okay, so in Beasts of Prey, that story is told through different perspectives. One of the main characters' names is Ekon, and Ekon is like this bookworm. He's into numbers. He's just a nerd. Despite the fact that he looks like a warrior, he's just a nerd, and he's very organized, and he's the kind of guy that gets to the airport 2 hours early, which is what I do. And
Yeah,
so I would like to travel and do stuff with Econ because we have the same energy
exactly. Yeah.
about planning and being orderly. Um, who would make it worse? Oh gosh. I love, oh, I'm trying to think. I mean, a lot of the girls I write are kind of messy. Just
True.
emotionally very
Yeah,
messy. So
yeah,
I'm not sure. I might like to travel with them at the end of the story. I'm not sure at the beginning when they're still figuring things out.
right. Yeah, yeah.
I think they would all probably drive me a little bit nuts.
Yeah. And I know Callisto was a character, right? And
Yeah, I think I would
I,
I would not like going out with her.
no, no, no. And that was very true to, I used to watch Hercules and Xena. And all that. So she was kind of in that mix. And so I really liked her inclusion in that. So when you're doing your research, What is the weirdest or most unexpected piece of research that you've ever come across when you've been writing a book?
Oh, I find interesting stuff all the time, and I find things that I end up not even using. I think it was really important to me with I, Medusa because I was writing about a real place, Athens,
Mhm.
to really make sure I had a grasp of the material culture. What was it really like at that time? So I read as much as I could. And one of the interesting things I learned was that ancient Athenians obviously did not have pockets, did not have purses. And so you think about where did they keep their money? And as it turned out, they kept money under their tongues and would
Wow.
just pull it out. And I remember
No.
reading that and being like, I had to make a choice. I actually made a choice not to include that because I felt like that was just too alienating for an average reader. A classicist would be like, "Yep, that's correct," but I just was like, I think that's too weird. But then I was like, I mean, that's true. They didn't have pockets, they didn't have wallets, they didn't have purses. So
Nobody would have come up with that idea. Where
yeah,
did this come from? Yeah, oh,
gross me out.
that's cool. That is really good. Um, one of the last things we have here is if there was a soundtrack, you did your little what do you call it, playlist kind of thing for I, Medusa. What is a song or two that you would put on that soundtrack? Do you have
Oh
it?
gosh, well,
That's a
yeah.
weird
I think
question, but anyway.
Well, I have that playlist, and a lot of the songs on there, like I kind of have it roughly in the order of like what songs were playing in my mind. I'll tell you, I tend to have one or two instruments that I think about or kind of affiliate with each book I write. So with I'm Medusa, it was like a lot of dramatic, like classical music, and also just a lot of piano, a lot of like really striking violin.
Mhm.
Um, and so I listened to a lot of instrumentals. Hans Zimmer is one of my favorite
Yeah,
composers. I listened
yeah,
to a lot of his work. Very big, swoony, emotional, like
right.
strings,
Yeah.
string quartets. So I think it's not even so much of a soundtrack. It's just kind of it's certain instruments that I don't know. Instruments carry different emotions for me. When
Oh
you hear a
yeah,
drum
absolutely.
and it's
Yeah.
very like angry and fast versus a guitar versus so for me, I think of a lot of violin and a lot of piano when I think about I Medusa.
Yeah. Okay, here's one, a little bit different, but
Mhm.
if when someone decides to make a movie or streaming of your one of your books, have you ever thought of casting who you would cast as certain characters?
So I did it for I Medusa just for fun. I made a post. I think it's still up on Instagram where I did a like I guess you call it quote unquote fan cast.
Yeah, yeah.
um, where I kind of said, okay, this is who I would pick. Halle Bailey, if you all know, she was Ariel in Little Mermaid.
Right.
She was kind of the face that I went to a lot when I was thinking about Medi. So I think about it. It's fun to kind of have a picture of a real person in your head
Yeah,
as you're
and
writing.
it's like Poseidon and
Mhm. Baby and yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
who would that be? So anyway, I think that's I know when I read a book and I like, I've got something in mind, and when they don't
Yeah.
do it right, I'm very unhappy.
Yes, I
So
feel that way too. It's why I'm not a huge I don't always like faces on covers because it immediately imposes somebody else's
right.
version of the book, whereas I like to just picture everything myself. But I get asked that question, and so it's fun to be like, well, if I can wave a magic wand,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
this is who I picture.
Unfortunately, authors don't always have that option to choose and cast the people.
Most of the time we
Yeah,
don't. I
yeah.
think we're
Uh,
lucky if we get any input.
right, exactly. Do you have anything that you'd like to add, Emily?
I like your books.
Thank you.
But we do want to invite everybody to join us as we partner with Arkansas Tech on March 19th, which is next Thursday, next week. Ayana's going to be there for an event. They are having like a meet and greet kind of thing at 5:30. There will be some refreshments provided. She will be there from 6 to 7-ish signing books. We will have some books of hers there to sell. Bring your own if you've already got it. And so I think we'll have a really good time. And you've heard a little bit from her, but there you can really dig into some things you might have other questions about. But Ayana, I cannot, am I saying your name correctly?
Ayana, yeah.
Ayana. Okay. Ayana. We're really excited, and I know a lot of people who are excited that you're coming and going to be part of our community for a while. Anyhow, looking forward to seeing you next week, the 19th, over at
Yes.
Arkansas Tech Pantograph Library, and we will see you then.
Yes, I'm so excited. This is going to be my very first time visiting Russellville, even though
Oh,
I'm down the road. So this is special for me, and I hope to see folks there and also writers. I love just getting to talk about
right.
writing
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
sharing whatever I can.
Well, I tell you, we have an excellent group of local writers that, and from around Arkansas, but even in our vicinity here, because I have like 6 books on my desk right now that people brought by, and they're all good. So that's exciting to see. And I know that when people hear this podcast or come and visit, while in person, that will get them excited, and I think that's really true about getting young people excited about writing, and to have someone, authors that they can relate to, and they can say, yes, I did this and you can too, kind of thing. So
Exactly.
yeah,
If I can
so
do it, you can do it.
that's right.
So
That's right.
very excited for next week.
That'll be fun. So anyway, you take care, and we will see you on March 19th.
All right.
All right.
Bye. See you soon.
Bye.